emphasize that we do not know who or what has triggered this outbreak of anti-mutant violence. The demonstrators claim to be defending themselves against mutant attacks.
I don't understand, Professor. Why has it gotten worse?
When we saved President Kelly's life last year, he learned that not all mutants were evil. Now his followers feel betrayed. So often in our history, unhappy, misguided people have created scapegoats, blaming those that are different for the problems in their own lives.
It is an evil in men's hearts that must be fought. If we stand up to the troublemakers, they will give up their cruel designs. If we fail, their intolerance will grow and many could perish.
The private video line.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another GospelX, the Gospel according to the X-Men. And we are now in episode one of season 2. And Till Death Do Us Part. So we're going to do both parts tonight. Well, actually, depending on what time you're actually watching this, it is tonight for us. And I'm Jonathan, this is Henry. So we showed you the episode just before this. And so, Henry, what do you think?
Well, I think that in the first episode, when we get to big surprise, Morph is still alive, right?
Yeah.
And seems like he's holding a grudge against the X-Men. Which brings us to the theme about people who are kind of blaming other people for the problem, because we see another instance of that in the first episode when we get introduced to this radical human group that explicitly hates mutants, Friends of Humanity, right? It was a little bit more in the first season. It was a little bit less pronounced, but now we actually see a real group out with motivations to actually disrupt and harm mutants for no other reason than that they're different from them. And one of the interesting things was Xavier actually touches on the topic of why they're actually doing it.
Yeah, and he used the word scapegoat.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Using it, scapegoating, which basically is them blaming their own problems and issues on another group.
Right.
Without actually solving the issue in the first place, right?
And you know what? It's like, to bring it to more of a contemporary, today, we hear a lot on the news about people scapegoating, right? Like, I'm unemployed because, or you're unemployed because, right? Yeah. So we have scapegoating for that, and who else?
Well, when we get introduced to Morph again, he holds a real big grudge against the X-Men for actually leaving him in one of the first episode of the first season. Yeah, and continually blames his problems on the X-Men and how it is, and we actually come to a conclusion at the end of the second episode where he's actually confronted.
Right, and then we now see the extreme of when a person continues to blame on other things and not really look at himself and focus on the issues and try to resolve it themselves.
You get real bitterness.
Bitterness
in your heart.
And luckily for the artists of the X-Men, it's like they even drew him in a way that looks like he's been in a grudge for a long time.
Well, it actually has a split personality. With Morph being Morph, right? Yeah. He can actually show that different aspect of himself physically.
Yeah. So the lesson to be learned, what kind of takeaway should we have on this episode?
Well, as a Christian, what is our opinion on scapegoating and blaming others for issues?
Right. Yeah, we know that back in the New Testament when Jesus was approached by the Pharisees, that the Pharisees had tried scapegoating, and their scapegoats were Gentiles. Their scapegoats were, the sinners are those who are ill, who are widowed or divorced, or, those guys cause the problems, not us, right? And yet Jesus says, no, right? Your problems is because of your choices, your own religiosity, your choices, your habits. You need to address it yourself. So it's the proverbial focus on the plank in your eye, not the speck on the other guy's eye type of thing. So yeah, Christian-wise, we too have to be careful of when we use others as scapegoating, when we should actually take a moment of pause and reflection to see whether the problems that we are facing, is it really about our own choices? Is it something that we have to resolve and take responsibility of our own actions and not just easy and quickly to say, oh, I blame it on them or I blame it on something?
Because the problem doesn't get solved that way.
No. And so I guess you and I both agree that we have to take more of an active approach rather than a passive approach. And because if we don't, we'll turn out to be like
very bitter. We'll turn inward.
And then have these black eyes.
Yeah.
All right. Anything you want to add?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us with another episode of Gospel X. Till next time, have a blessed week.